By bias, I mean until her death, she thought that Dean was innocent, even though he was proven guilty. And she thought Dean walked on water, not unlike Jesus Christ. So I think we have to analyze his upbringing with a little bit of skepticism and assume she's leaving out some major details. But even then, his upbringing still is super fucked up and makes a lot of sense that he was who he became, if that makes sense. But either way, let's get into it. So Dean was known as a very solitary child. He didn't like to hang out with older kids and pretty much kept to himself at all times. Red flag number one. But Mary said that this stemmed from an incident when he went to a birthday party as a child where all the other children got a prize of some sort, but Dean didn't receive any. Boo fucking who. But this made Dean very upset and just kind of become a recluse and seclude himself from the other kids because he didn't want to get his feelings hurt. He didn't want to get his feelings hurt. Instead, he just wanted to hurt other children. It all makes sense now. So for all of you that don't like kids in this generation just getting handouts for doing nothing, the ones that don't will kill your children, turns out. I'm kidding. And from my research, I know that Mary was a narcissistic, coddling, helicopter type parent, and his father was verbally and physically abusive to Mary, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was also abusive to Dean Corll and his younger brother. There's no information that we have that says he was, and Mary said, no, he never touched the kids. I feel like he probably did, but we don't know that for sure. So this is just all the fucked up ingredients going into the serial killer pot of stew, okay? And it just gets worse from here. So early on in Dean's childhood, his parents moved to Houston, Texas, and got divorced twice, because sometimes once just isn't enough. And after their second divorce, Dean was sent to go live with his grandmother in Indiana for a summer where he worked on her farm. And this is where Mary said that he got, quote unquote, all the sexual education that a boy needed. What? So basically, at 10 years old, mind you, Dean he was just watching animals copulate on the property. So his whole sexual education was donkeys and pigs bumping uglies, consensually and most likely unconsensually. What could go wrong? But when Dean was 14, he and his mother and younger brother moved to Vidor, Texas. Now, Vidor was a fun little town that was known as a sundown town. Sounds nice, doesn't it? It's not. That refers to a town that has signs put up to warn African American people that they can't be caught in the town after nightfall. This wasn't that long ago. So this town was just littered with psychopaths, degenerates, and racists. It's basically a town just riddled with hate. A perfect breeding ground for a serial killer? And a reporter at the time, Sally Bigsby Defty, love that name, described the town as quote unquote, essentially the kind of place where the big event for the kids is to pour kerosene on a cat and light it on fire. I don't know, maybe try cow tipping like the rest of us small town farm folk and not use Mr. Whiskers as a romaine candle. I say romaine candle, Roman candle, romaine. Oh, that sounds fancy as just some food for thought. So to be in a town where kids are just setting animals on fire as a pastime is just a recipe for disaster for the loner, no gold star child, Dean Corll. And Dean, wouldn't you know it, fit right in. As a teenager, he would often target the local flying squirrel population by trapping them, torturing them, and then killing them, and then either putting them on a necklace to wear around town, or just shove them in his cowboy boots and take him to school. Red flag number 2 or 5, I don't know. I'm not gonna keep count. Red flag. But besides disemboweling squirrels, Dean had other pastimes, which included playing trombone in his school musical marching band. What a fucking loser. And candy. Dun, dun, dun. Because Vidor, Texas would become the birthplace of the Corll Candy Company. And this all stemmed from a local pecan salesman that came by Mary's house, Dean's mother, and noticed that Mary was making pecan pies. And he said to her, hey, you should probably make your pies on your own and sell them yourself. It could be very lucrative. And Mary thought, well, that's just a swell idea. So she packed up both the kids and moved on over to Houston and went to a candy factory where she would buy a praline recipe for a whole $50. And that's when the Corll Candy Company started. And Dean, always wanting to impress his mother, soon took over operations. He'd run the machines, he'd put the candy into boxes, and he would also deliver them. So this kid's life revolved around dead squirrels, trombone, and candy. If those aren't the final ingredients in the serial killer stew, I don't know what the fuck is. Just kidding. If you play trombone, it's fine. But if you're killing squirrels, get help. So after high school, Dean returned to his grandmother's farm in Indiana, you know, where he got his sexual education, and got a job at a coil factory. And this is where Dean almost exclusively started hanging out with only children. Red flag number, we don't know. His regular playmates were a pair of sisters that lived down the road from him. And Dean used to make innocent 8mm videos with them, where he would make them recreate mock operations with chickens and their entrails that were in the replacement of real organs, because that would be bad. Not the dissecting chicken part of it with little girls. Nah, all the adults in this situation are just like,
That's strange, but he's a nice kid, so it's fine. It's fine.
Like, everybody just brushed it off, which is just so concerning. But I guess in the times, people just didn't give a fuck about kids. I mean, people barely do now. I don't know. And it's also interesting because Dean actually had like a 0 crime record through his teens and into his early and mid-20s. And everyone would describe Dean as quote-unquote vanilla, which we will soon find out is the biggest misconception known to man, because this man was a shit mix of flavors, none of which involved vanilla. But at the age of 24, Dean was drafted into the army, where he served as a radio repairman in Fort Hood. And this is when a friend of Dean's in the army would say that this is the time where Dean would have his first homosexual relations with another man. I don't think you could have homosexual relations with another anything, but all right, thank you, Dean's friend. But that would happen very quickly because Dean only lasted in the army for less than a year because his mommy phoned up and said, "Hey, Dean, I need you to come back and help me with the candy at the candy factory, so you can't be serving time anymore." And they let him off with an exemption. So this guy's now a veteran of some sort. And when he went back to town, his mom had plopped the Coral Candy Company right across the street from the local elementary school. So I know that this is your demographic, Mary, but it's also your son's. So Dean, more than happy to be back, just went right into working at the Coral Candy Company. And he would be calling the kids over from the elementary school, handing out free candy that was spoiled. Sure. And making friends with the kids, otherwise known as grooming. And this is where this would all start to spiral into him grooming and making friends with kids and start to make relationships with them in order to take advantage of them in later years. Dean was a smart person. He knew what he was doing, and he played that long game, because as far as we know, he was not killing kids yet. He wanted to cover all of his bases and make sure that all the parents that gave a shit knew that he was just the innocent kid. Candy man, I couldn't do anything. I'm giving kids candy. But in reality, he was plotting. He was plotting. So Dean is working at this candy factory, having loads of kids come and get candy all the time. And he thought, hey, why not make a little hangout place? So he would put a pool table in the back of the factory where kids would come and use it and hang out with them. And this is also around the time where the people that worked at the factory, the adults that worked at the factory, noticed that, quote unquote, Dean wasn't all that interested in women, come to think of it, but he really liked hanging out with the little boys that came through. Red flag. Okay, let's not, okay. But they would also say, quote unquote, but he was a nice guy and a hard worker, and he didn't seem to be doing anything too terrible. So, what the f? So anyway, all the adults that worked within this candy factory just kind of pushed his weird behavior aside and shoved it under the rug and didn't address it at all. And after a couple years of the candy factory being established, it would be filled with young boys, either hanging out or actually working at the facility. Because child labor wasn't really a thing back then. But none of these boys actually reported any shenanigans or inappropriate behavior happening within the factory itself. Mostly, I think, because they were scared to say anything, or Dean had groomed them to the point of not feeling comfortable nagging on him, because he was like the cool place to hang out. And if they were to rag on him about something that he was doing inappropriately, they would lose that place. And in a town like Vidor, Texas, where there's nothing to do, I think Dean had built this kind of perfect scenario for himself. This was also around the time Mary, Dean's mother, went through her 3rd and 4th divorce with her 3rd and 4th husband. And it's crazy how a narcissistic, delusional, oblivious, money-crazed, child-neglecting woman can't keep a husband. It is just beyond me, I'll tell you what. But the stresses of Mary's divorces would lead to the Coral Candy Company going under. So Dean was forced to take a day job at the Houston Lighting Company. And Dean's mother moved to Colorado based on the advice of a psychic. So that fits the bill, to be honest. And this would end up being one of the catalysts that sparked Dean Coral's reign of terror. And he conveniently moved to a shed across the street from the Cooley Elementary School, the same school in which the Coral Candy Company was across the street from. How convenient. And he would pimp this place out, I tell you what. He installed a blacklight, a TV, a stereo, and a primitive alarm system that would flash a red light in his bedroom anytime anybody came close to the shed unannounced. So this guy essentially made every 1970s teenage boy dream party hangout